Let me just tell you a little bit about what we're doing. Was anybody during the campaign come out and hear my Department of Neighborhoods presentation? Okay, so this is the day where I show you that I actually am doing what was in that plan. And so if you saw the presentation during the campaign, we laid out a very specific plan. And we're doing it today in the very first neighborhood in the city of Detroit is this neighborhood south of Marygrove. We're starting in the area from Green Lawn on the east, Puritan on the south, Wyoming on the west, and Marygrove on the north. And what I talked about over and over in the campaign is that the strategy for the last 30 years of dealing with blight in Detroit has never made any sense to me. It has been demolish, demolish, demolish. And it hasn't worked. And we all know why it hasn't worked. You'll have 4 abandoned houses on a block, and the demo crew will come down the block, and they'll have paperwork for 1 house, right? And they'll knock it down, and they'll leave. They'll come back 6 months later, they'll knock down another house. In the meantime, what's happened? 2 more families have left. We've gone from 1.8 million to 700,000 people in this city, from people walking away from their homes in astonishing numbers. And so I have believed that if we take an entire neighborhood at once, we can reverse the trend. Now, there are people who say that I'm wrong and that I'm too optimistic. And in the next 90 days, we're going to find out whether that's true. Because the first place we're trying this is in this community. So, starting today, we got a new strategy. And there are 5 pieces of the strategy. 1, we're going to save every house we can. I don't have to tell anybody in this neighborhood how beautiful these homes are. It breaks my heart to see plywood across the buildings, or even worse in some cases, some of these buildings starting to crumble. And I'm just amazed. When I was the prosecutor taking houses and I was looking for neighborhoods, I drove through this neighborhood 10 years ago, went right through it. I would have never stopped here as a place where I was worrying about abandoned buildings. I was shocked during the campaign when I came through here to see what's happened in just a few short years. When we take the house, we're going to auction them to buyers who want them. We're going to partner with you to find those buyers, and I want to talk to you about that in the course of the night tonight. We have Talmer Bank, who has stepped up in a very big way to make loans. Is anybody here from Talmer? Okay, the bank officers aren't here yet. I'm sure they'll show up. And then we're going to move quickly to demolish the houses that we can't save. And so that's the way that we're going to approach this. So when I was in the prosecutor's office, I started this program. And I realized what the problem was. The problem is that what we have done in this city is when somebody abandons a house, we don't step in and take it then. We wait until that house gets lost for back taxes. And in this state, you have 3 years to pay those taxes. So if you walk away from that house tomorrow, it is 3 years before the city or the state try to take it. Well, what happens to an abandoned house in this city in 3 years, right? And what happens to the block? And so I was looking for a solution that said, let's not wait 3 years. And so I started lawsuits on a nuisance theory. And nuisance law is very simple. You cannot maintain your property in a way that's a nuisance to your neighbor. You can't. And so I filed a simple lawsuit. I said, I don't care if you paid your taxes or not. If a house is abandoned in a neighborhood, it is a danger to the community. We have abandoned houses catch fire and catch the neighbors' houses, and they've died. We've had children attacked from people out of abandoned houses. We've seen them turned into drug houses. We've seen them infested with rats. And so we started filing lawsuits against the owners of abandoned houses. And here was the key. We would sue on an entire neighborhood at once. Because if you take 1 house and you leave 3, you haven't done anything. You got to show the neighborhood we're going to take the entire thing. We had enormous success. In 1,000 cases, I got a house that was an abandoned, fixed up, renovated, somebody moved in by taking the whole neighborhood at once. Now, this was 2001, 2002, 2003. Market conditions were different then. Mortgages were easier to get then. This is going to be an interesting time. But at least then, we had no trouble selling these houses. The slumlords challenged me. They said, you can't force us to fix up these houses or turn them over to you. We have a right to let them sit there vacant until somebody comes along to buy them. The Court of Appeals ruled, no, you don't. And that's how we managed to win all those cases. And as I was leaving the prosecutor's office, the Harvard School of Government named the Abandoned Property Program one of the 50 innovative programs in America. It was working. Unfortunately, the county got sidetracked, got off the program, and we haven't used it. But I talked about it over and over during the campaign. And here are some houses from, all right, Council President Brenda Jones. Give her a hand. I would have normally started off with the council president because everything I'm telling you here tonight is only possible because for the first time in many years, the mayor and the city council are working together. And everything you're about to hear tonight, you like that? Everything you're about to hear tonight was actions taken by the city council to allow us to do this. And I know the president, who can answer these questions as well as I can, will participate in the question and answer. But here's a house that was abandoned. I sued on when I was the prosecutor. And after we sold it, there's how it looked. Here's another house that we sued and took from the owner. And after we sold it, that's how it looked. This is what we did 1,000 times. That house was over in northwest Detroit. After we sold it, there's how it looked. 1,000 times we sold buildings that they said you couldn't salvage because they're abandoned. And that is what I want to get back to. So, how do we restart the program? We're going to go back to what we were doing. It's not like I don't understand this. So, here's the problem. We need a single agency. When I started on January 1st, who was dealing with abandoned houses in this city? You had the federal government, HUD. You had the state government, MSHDA, the Michigan State Housing Authority. You had the city Building and Safety and Engineering Department. You had the Blight Task Force, the Blight Authority, a land czar, the State Land Bank, the City Land Bank, and the County Land Bank. On January 1, you had 9 agencies dealing with abandoned houses in this city. All of them good people, going 9 different directions. President Jones and I sat down and said, what if we could get these 9 agencies down to 1? The governor cooperated, the feds cooperated, and we have now done that. We have created the Detroit Land Bank, one single entity to handle everything. So the Land Bank now is suing the owners of the abandoned houses. They're going to sell vacant lots. So if we take a house and knock it down because it can't be saved, we're going to sell that vacant lot to the neighbors for $100. Right now, you want to buy that side lot next to your house, who do you call, right? We're going to centralize it to a single place. We're going to line up the banks to help get loans, which we've already done here. And we're going to coordinate all the demolition so we can move through a neighborhood, knock down the houses that can't be saved, sell the ones that can be saved. And so the Land Bank, you met the chair, Erica Gerson, but these are 5 people deeply dedicated to this city who volunteer their time. They were appointed jointly by the city council and myself. One was appointed by the governor, and we're all working together. The Land Bank is the key to what they're doing. They're now a separate entity that still reports to us, but they have the legal ability to move quickly. So, in this neighborhood, what are you going to see? Within the boundaries that I talked about, Green Lawn, Puritan, Wyoming, and Marygrove College, there are 79 vacant houses in that area today. And today, we went through and posted on all 79 houses. Have you seen the postings? Okay? This, right? That's on all 79 houses. Our officers went through and did it. And it said, this vacant house about to be seized by the Detroit Land Bank. We gave them till Monday to call. And after that, we're going to start a lawsuit against all 79. We're going to follow them all the same day. And so here's what's going to happen. They have till Monday to call us. If they call us, we're going to say to them this: you can't leave that house abandoned. It's not going to be tolerated. If you want to come in and sign a consent agreement with us today and say, you show us you have a contractor to fix it up, you got to give us that contract within 60 days, and you have to have somebody in the house within 6 months. If you'll sign an agreement that you'll do those things, you keep the house. And that's what I want. I don't want the houses. I want them to fix them up. But if you don't meet those deadlines, the house immediately goes over to the land bank, and we're going to auction it. So we're saying to everybody, you want to avoid a lawsuit, you can sign the agreement today. If they don't call us by Monday, they're going to be sued. Where's Kevin Samowski? Kevin, stand up. Kevin is going to file 79 lawsuits next Monday. He was the deputy prosecutor to me in the prosecutor's office. He used to be the best homicide prosecutor in the state of Michigan. I wanted a murder prosecutor to deal with these abandoned houses. So Kevin is going to file the 79 cases. All right, he's a pretty tough guy. So they're going to have to file an answer. Once we sue them, we have to serve them, which we'll do legally. They have 28 days to file an answer. Now, we've been down this road before. A lot of people don't pay $10,000 to hire a lawyer to fight for a house they walked away from. And so on that 28th day, if they don't file an answer, then we file a motion for default and we take the title to the house. If they do, we'll litigate it. But as I tell you, we had 1,000 cases before. There wasn't a single case where they came into court and said, Judge, I know the house is abandoned. I know it's starting to be stripped, but I don't have the money to fix it up. Let me keep it. The judge says, no. The fact that you don't have the ability to fix it up is not your neighbor's problem. Okay? You have an obligation to your neighbors. If you don't have the ability to take care of the house yourself, you need to deed it to us. So maybe they'll hire somebody and maybe we'll be in litigation. But if they don't file an answer, probably sometime in early June we'll start to take titles to these houses. Is it going to be 10 houses? Is it going to be 40 houses? We're going to find out together. But then, once we take them, we're going to auction the house on a website that's going to be called buildingdetroit.com. And we are going to be actively publicizing it. When I was doing this 10 years ago, a huge number of the houses we sold were to family members of people who lived in the neighborhood. People called their sister, called their niece, called their best friend. It came from members of the church, and you may have people from this church, but people who wanted to move into the neighborhood near their church. And so we're going to hold an auction, and it's going to work just like eBay. You're going to be able to see the picture of the house. You're going to be able to have an open house to go through it, and you're going to be able, but the bidding's going to be one day. It's going to start at 8 in the morning and at 5 at night, and you'll be able to see who the bidders are and who the winning bidder is at the end of the day. And if it's a house that can't be saved, we're going to come through and knock it down. So somewhere around June, we're going to be here saying, let's get bidders. Now, if a developer bids and fixes it up and rents it out, they're entitled to do that. I don't have a great problem with that, but I would prefer that we have home ownership by the owner of the house living in the house. And I want to work with you to try to find as many homeowners as we can. So, after we take it, there's going to be a for sale sign, just like any other for sale sign, except instead of saying Century 21, it'll look like that. For sale by Detroit Land Bank, and it will have the website, buildingdetroit.org. You don't need to go on it today. It'll be live next week, but in fact, we're going to start auctioning some houses on the east side next week, but that's how it's going to work. So we're going to have an open house. And when we have the open house, we're going to ask the neighbors to be there. So as people come through, you greet them. You welcome them to the neighborhood, right? I mean, this is what we want to do. And so I see my graphics people have figured out how to put it on a picture. I didn't see that before, but it probably won't be quite that big. But you got the idea. So they were excited about their sign. All right. So here's the thing. When we bid, once the bid starts, we don't distinguish between a company that wants to renovate it and rent it and an individual homeowner. High bid wins. So what can we do to try to make sure we get as many homeowners as possible? We went to Talmer Bank, and Talmer Bank today announced $1 million commitment just to this neighborhood just to this project. I drove the bank president and vice president through the neighborhood. I showed them how beautiful the houses were. And Talmer's saying, we think we can make money loaning in this neighborhood. We think this neighborhood can come back. All right, this is what you want. Banks actually helping the neighborhood come back instead of foreclosing, right? So they made today a commitment of $1 million for this neighborhood. And here's how it's going to work. If you win the auction on a house that we're selling here, Talmer will give you a $25,000 forgivable loan. You might win the auction for $15,000. They'll still give you $25,000. You can use it to fix up the house. And they will forgive it, if you live there, $5,000 a year for 5 years as long as you live there. So basically, you're getting $25,000 to fix up the house if you're going to live there for 5 years. So you see what we're trying to do. We're trying to create incentives for people who want to fix these houses and stay in the neighborhood. They will also be in this neighborhood and at community meetings to offer loans. If you say, hey, I don't want to move, but I'd like, now that I see the other houses are starting to get fixed up, I'm going to stay. I want to fix up my house. They're going to be offering home repair mortgages, or if you want to refinance your mortgage, they're going to be active on normal commercial terms. So they want to be really active in this neighborhood. They're convinced this neighborhood is going to be very exciting. In fact, they're also interested in making business loans to the storefronts on Wyoming. That's how engaged they are in believing in this area. All right, here's the next thing. Okay, so that part is what we're doing on the houses. Here's the next thing. We're going to light your neighborhood. How do you feel about that? So, we are coming through in May. We have a new plan that I'm going to show you in the Public Lighting Authority that is putting in the new lights. But think about what we're doing. I want to be able to auction these homes in June. So we're going to come through the neighborhood in May, and this place is going to be lit up. We're going to do everything we can, all at once, taking all the different departments of the city, working together for a single neighborhood. So right now, the lights are going up in 2 pilot areas. There's an east side over at basically Gratiot and 7 Mile. The one closer here, if you want to see what it's going to look like, between Fenkel and McNichols west of Southfield all the way through the city border, they're almost done with this. In 2 weeks, they're going to be completely done with this pilot area. Drive through any one of these streets after dark, and you'll see what your neighborhood is going to look like, but I think you're going to feel good about it. So let me tell you a little bit about the lighting program, because again, I'm not going to be able to tell you we can do everything we want to do, but I'm just going to be honest with you about what we are going to do. So today in the city of Detroit, we have 88,000 light fixtures. Half of them work. Not the same ones every day, right? Okay? Of those 88,000, 53,000 are on your neighborhood streets. About 20,000 are in alleys, and about 15,000 are on the thoroughfares, on McNichols, on Wyoming, etc. That's kind of the makeup of the lights today. The Lighting Authority in 2013 adopted a plan. I think they got up 200 or 300 lights in all of 2013. In January, the new city council and I teamed up and we replaced the Lighting Authority and we replaced the plan. Again, what you're going to see is because Council President Jones and the council and the mayor are working together. But here's what they did in 2013. They said the lights we're going to use are the old sodium lights that the cities always use, the old bulbs. They said that in the alleys, we've got 20,000 lights in alleys in this city. 12,000 of them work today. They said we're going to take all 20,000 lights down, whether they're working or not, out of the alleys. Now the alleys I'm going to talk about a little bit because we're not going to be able to do what you want, but that's what their intention was, to take down the 12,000 working alley lights. And if you wanted to have your own alley light, get together with the neighbors behind you, you couldn't do it. That was the 2013 plan. In the neighborhoods, they cut lights out of the neighborhoods. And basically, what they did for most blocks in this city is say, we'll put a light at one corner of the block, a light at the other corner of the block, and no lights in the middle. If there's a light in the middle today that's working, we're going to take it down. Can you imagine what your reaction would have been like if the new lighting plan came along and they took down the working lights in the middle of your block? That was the plan that was being implemented when I came in and President Jones came in January. It didn't meet the national standards. It was pitch dark in the middle of the block. Made no sense. So here's the new plan. This is what we are doing now, starting in January, and what you will find if you drive through that area west of Southfield between Fenkell and McNichols. Today, we're using the old sodium lights. Last year's plan was the old sodium lights. This year, we're going to 100% new LED lights. When you see them, you will love them. The old sodium lights are 75 watts. The new LED lights are 150 watts. I've got some complaints in these neighborhoods, and the complaints are, it's too bright. I got to close my blinds. And so we have actually gone back and we've kind of tilted the lights away from the houses a little bit because they really were awful bright if you were in front of them. But it's a nice problem to have as a mayor when they're calling you saying the light's too bright at night, right? You haven't had that in Detroit. So we're going to 100% LED lights. They last twice as long. You don't have to worry about them burning out as much. Seems obvious, right? In the neighborhoods. Today we have 53,000. They had a plan for 30,800. If your block was under 600 feet, which is most blocks in the city, you got no light in the middle of the block, just on the corners. We changed that plan, and now just about all the blocks in this city get a light in the middle of the block. And you'll see that as you start driving down the pilot areas, how much of a difference it makes to have that light in the middle of the block. So we put another 11,000 lights into the plan. In the alleys are something that, again, we have a limited amount of money, and so we had to make some choices. The alleys today have 20,000 lights, 12,000 of them are working. The 2013 plan was going to take down all the alley lights. We couldn't figure out why you would take down a light that's working today. That didn't make sense. But we don't have the money to light the alleys, and in this city, in the vast majority of the city, the alleys were turned back to the neighbors 30, 40 years ago. When I was a kid in Detroit, right, the garbage truck came down the alleys. Anybody remember that? Right? We'd play back in the alleys, okay? But 30 or 40 years ago, the city switched the garbage removal to the streets, and they turned the alleys back. In some neighborhoods, the neighbors moved their fences back. Some neighborhoods, they never did. Some neighborhoods, the garage against the alley. But the alleys are today your backyard. And so we had to make a decision. If we were going to add the 11,000 lights to the main streets, we didn't have any money to light the back alleys. And so that's the choice that we made, is that we're going to light the streets well. If the alley light's working, we're going to leave it. When it burns out, we're not going to be able to replace it. But we got with Detroit Edison, and Edison says they'll do this in the alleys. That they'll hang a replacement light for $100 and $17 a month. So if you want to get together with the neighbor behind you, your neighborhood association wants to get together, you can make your own arrangement with Edison on the alleys, but we are not going to be in a position to do that. I wish I could do more on that, but there just isn't the money to do it. And so what you're going to see in May is we are going to roll through here with the lighting crews, putting in the new LED lights, and by probably the third week in May, this neighborhood will be lit up at night. And so that's really what we're trying to do. And then the last thing was I just wanted, and Alexis introduced them, but the other thing we did in the Department of Neighborhoods is we dedicated 2 people in every city council district with one job, to fight blight. And so in this neighborhood, your managers for the Department of Neighborhoods, Kim Tandy and Sean Davis, are here. And this isn't the old city hall. You got a problem with your taxes, you don't call them. Okay, you got a problem with paperwork, you don't call them. They have one job, and that's to fight blight. And so Kim, raise your hand again. How many have met Kim already? All right, so she's doing okay. By the next time, I expect a lot more hands because it's her job to be here. But here's what working with the block clubs or with you, any issue with an abandoned house or a building, any issue with a site with illegal dumping, any issue with vacant lots or overgrown, code enforcement issues, squatters in a house, and the like. That's fighting blight. Kim is here to deal with those issues and work through our bureaucracy. So we have somebody based in the neighborhood. She's at the Northwest Activity Center, but she's based in the district, and she's going to do that. So you kind of get a sense of all the different ways we're addressing this. And so here's the thing I'm going to be asking you for, is in June, we got to get bidders on these houses. If you believe as I do, we want homeowners. We got to do everything we can to reach out to them. We want you to call your relatives, call your friends, tell them this whole neighborhood's coming back. They're going to be able to get a house cheaper. I'm convinced in these auctions of this quality than they ever could have gotten. We want you, if your churches are in this area, to encourage the congregation, and Kim and the team will be in the churches on the Sundays saying, please, look on the website. You can move to the neighborhood. We've already talked to the president of Marygrove College. We are going to actively solicit the employees of Marygrove. Come in and bid on the houses. We want you to live in the neighborhood. Marygrove's talking about maybe doing some incentives for their employees to be in the neighborhood. But this is going to be the key. We got to make these auctions work because we got to have neighbors to fill up these homes. So that's our plan. That's where we're going. That's what you're going to see on the signs. And before I take questions, I want to ask the council president, Brenda Jones, if she has anything she'd like to say today.
Good evening, everyone, and thank you, Mr. Mayor. Is this exciting or is this exciting? I want you to know that I bought my house in this district and I grew up in this district. So to see what has happened in this community has really been disturbing to me because I know what this community was like when I first moved over here. As a young child, 7 years old, I moved on Prairie. I bought my house on Roseline, and so I know what this district was. I know what the Avenue of Fashion was back in the days. So we can all remember that and can appreciate that. I want to thank the mayor and his team, along with my colleagues at downtown at the city county building, city council, for making all of this possible. You all hear a lot of promises from council, from the mayor candidates during election period, but most of those promises you really don't see come true. One of the things that I know I have talked about is neighborhoods. We love downtown, we love Midtown, which is also a neighborhood, but also Marygrove is a neighborhood. Wyoming, 6 Mile, 7 Mile, Illinois, we're neighbors over here, and we're a neighborhood. And so it's good to see things happen in the neighborhoods just as they are happening downtown. And we're seeing, you know, as I've been in the community for the last 8 years, the one thing I hear a lot is safety. After I hear safety, I hear lights and blight. Well, what we're seeing today is going to actually help reduce crime. Because as people start moving into these vacant houses, it's going to help reduce people stealing. And we have a scrap metal deal that's coming up that I'm happy to see. But it's going to help where people won't be able to just go into these vacant houses and take the scrap and take it to a shop and take everything out, the heater, the furnace, everything. Because we're going to have neighbors living in those homes. So it's going to cut down on the crime. It's also going to help the city because you're going to have people in those houses paying taxes. It's going to help you because you remember the day when you could walk next door and ask your neighbor, you have a cup of flour or a cup of sugar I could borrow. You remember those days? Because I remember those days because you're going to actually have a neighbor now, and it's not going to be a vacant house. And I think that's exciting. So I am looking forward to moving this project ahead. I am working with the team, along with my colleagues who's working with the team. And for the first time in a long time, what you're seeing is the mayor's office and the council in collaboration, working together, hand in hand, to make this a better city for you and for us all. And I think that's a great thing. What do you guys think about that? So I want to say thank you to everyone who's here tonight, because you're interested in making this a better city and making your neighborhood a better neighborhood as well. I'm looking forward to working with you all, to working with Kim in my district, and to making this a better city, the city that we want it to be, the city that we know it can be. So again, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, team, as we move forward with the Detroit Land Bank and getting these houses filled up. Thank you.
All right. So before, I just got to tell you, you want to know, you have a full service city council president. So last night she called me, mainly to complain to me about the lousy job I was doing getting the buses to run. But she saw a couple people who looked like they'd been on Linwood a long time. And she called to tell me she pulled over, she picked them up, she gave them a ride, didn't even charge them the $1.50. But she called to say, you got to get these buses fixed because I can't keep doing this. But isn't she great? Questions?
My name is Sylvia, and I work at Michigan Welfare Rights and Housing is a Human Rights Coalition, and I'm really glad that you mentioned the concern about squatters, or homeless folks, basically. So this is something we're actually trying to understand more of. Obviously, a lot of neighborhoods have at least one squatter on the block. We know this. But we're wondering what it is the city is planning to do then once a lot of these families get pushed out of these homes. Where can they go? Because there really is a dire need for affordable housing in this city.
Right. So a couple of things. One is, I know that some people are going to disagree with me on this, but I believe this very strongly. Squatting is not a solution to abandoned houses. When a squatter goes into the house, they can't get legal utilities, right? So what do? They got little burners, the number of fires we've had, et cetera. And for most homeless people, they've got other issues going on in their lives. Probably the last thing in the world they ought to be is isolated. And so when we find squatters as we go through here, we're going to deal with them on a very compassionate way. Now, if they're dealing drugs, it won't be quite so compassionate. But if we got people who are genuinely homeless, we're going to team up with COTS and the other emergency shelter organizations, get them into an environment where they've got support services, and move them. But squatters are not appropriate for moving into abandoned houses, and so we will be moving them out.
All right, understood. As long as you know the shelters are full too. This
yeah,
is a larger problem than just putting folks in a
I'm
shelter.
spending a lot. In fact, I'm working with COTS right now to speed up the money they've got so they have the resources. They're doing great work, and I got to find ways to get more resources to them. But even having said that, we do not want people in these houses who don't have legal utilities living. It's just not the right answer. So, but I'd love to work with you on better answers.
Two questions. You spoke about, the demolitions that's about to take place, and we know it's a massive amount, quite a tremendous amount of houses that's coming down. I forgot what was the number, like 300,000?
Yeah, probably closer to 40 or 50,000, but it's a big number.
So it's a lot of work. It's a process.
It is.
From the start to the finish to demo a house. And I understand you want Detroiters to be able to get some of this work. I don't know what's in place for like not a contractor. I don't know if you have all the general contractors in place or not. Pairing somebody that's small. Say if I got 2 dump trucks, and we know my hole's got to be backfilled. So that's one process. What is it? Is there anything in place to pair Detroiters that have the capability of doing some of this work with the contractors instead of not just giving it all to
they're absolutely, you're asking such a great question. And so here's what I did, because it is going to be as massive a construction project as this city has ever seen to take down 40 or 50,000. I'm hoping, I think we've probably got about 50,000 abandoned houses in the city. My goal is to take down 40,000 and sell 10,000 and get them reused. Can you imagine if you had 10,000 more families move into the city, what that would mean for us? So who could manage it? Anybody been by Sinai Grace Hospital, seen the new emergency room? Okay? The best construction team I ever worked with in my life was Dave Menardo and the team at DMC that built the new children's building, the Heart Hospital, Sinai Grace. They left DMC and the whole team came together to the city of Detroit. They're running this demo program. And what they're doing is this. We are trying to figure out, one, we're going to do it efficiently, but second, how do we get the work available to local contractors? And so they are putting packages out to bid of 10 to 25 houses clustered together. If they gave you a contract for 1,000, only a few big companies can do it. But by clustering them in groups of 10 to 25, we're getting lots of small contractors. So the first $3 million have just been let. 85% of that work was won by Detroit contractors. So it's going there. Rick Weiner is here, and I'm going to suggest that you go talk to him so that we can make sure you've got the details on how to get into the process and how you pair up, because we want to use the money to build the businesses in this community, and we want you to succeed at that.
Okay, one last question. Now, you said about the houses in June would go up online for auction.
Right.
And it's open to everyone.
Right.
So there's nothing, obviously nothing in place for like the neighborhood folks other than they got to outbid. I'm afraid of these investors going to come in and suck up all the, outbid these, local folks. What's in place? Why can't it be like a HUD where for like a month or so they put it out for homeowner occupancy?
I've got to sell 10,000 houses. I don't have time to fool around with a month a house, okay? I mean, it'll be 2,212 by the time we're done. So we got to go quickly. But here's the question. How do we get homeowners? When Talmer steps in and says, if you're a homeowner who's going to live in the house for 5 years, we'll give you a $25,000 forgivable loan. If you're a developer who's going to rent, we're not giving you that money. So what Talmer has done is basically give any true owner about a $25,000 advantage. If you still get outbid, I can't help that. But
well, that's what's going to happen.
We'll see, because
not see. We know what's going to happen.
Again, I auctioned hundreds of homes in 2001 to 2003. I would say 60% were won by individual homeowners and 40% were won by developers. Now, from my standpoint, I'd rather have a developer fix up the home and get a renter in there than have it vacant. I'd rather have a homeowner than a developer with a renter. And so that's what we're going to do. But the market's going to decide it, and the homeowners get a $25,000 advantage. That's why I'm saying to everybody here, we want you to call your friends and neighbors. We want the churches to get engaged, and we're going to see what happens.
Well, particularly in this area, they got a nice housing stock.
Right.
So the neighbors going to be out. The homeowners in the neighborhood's they just going to be out of the bidding. They can't outbid these investors.
Again, I don't know why you think that. I mean, if you look at what's happening in these auctions, you know how they're getting all these auctions? They're buying these houses for $500 at the Wayne County Treasurer's auction. That's what these guys are doing today. They're not bidding $5,000 and $10,000 and $15,000 for a house. So we'll see. You might be right. We're going to find out together.
All right, thanks.
Yeah, so Rick, why don't you, if you can go give him the information, and let's see if we can hook the gentleman up with Dave Menardo and the team and make sure he gets every opportunity to bid on the work. Yes, ma'am.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor. And I am a member of the Marygrove Community Association. And I also wanted to say I attended a lot of your home meetings in which you outlined what you are doing right now. So thank you. I wanted to ask, in the situations where we do have landlords who are renting these homes, I found that the city has not been doing a good job in enforcing the code. They don't even require them to register. You know, if you're going to rent, you're supposed to register. So will that be tightened up in the codes?
Absolutely right. This is why I do these meetings. You're absolutely right. And so that's the next thing that we're layering on here. So Charlie Beckham, stand up. Charlie Beckham is in charge of the Department of Neighborhoods. He has the code enforcement people. Kim and the team work for him. And so this is exactly what we're going to do, is that as we're going through this area, and we'll do this in other areas as well, he's responsible for making sure the code enforcement team is far more efficient in doing that. And here's the other problem, is historically, when the code enforcement officers have written tickets, they go into the administrative hearing, they get fined, and nobody from the city ever collects the fine. So what's the penalty? We've got a whole team dealing with the finances so that we do it. So we absolutely are coming behind on the landlords on code enforcement. And Charlie, you are going to get the code enforcement fixed, aren't you? All right, but a great idea, and he's going to get it done.
Good evening,
Good evening,
Mr. Mayor, and to everyone here. I have a concern, even though we fixed the houses up, people buy the houses, the neighborhood. Why do they want to live back in the neighborhood? Because they have a cheaper house. But we said we still have to do something better. And what I'm getting at, I do own a community center, and we are changing the culture of the people. And we have Mr. Cooper that partnered with us here. And what I'm really getting at, not only do we have to change the culture of just the homeowners, the whole community, the houses, who's going to buy these houses? Are these guys, or just going to roam the streets like they do? I wouldn't want to buy a house like that. I would not want to invest with drug dealers every other place, and they're there. So what do we have in place? I have something in place, but I need help. We need to not only get the houses occupied, and it's going to take a lot of money to get the houses occupied. A lot of times these investors, they go out and buy all these houses just to buy them, and then nothing is done about it. And so it's a recycle. So we need to do something. We need to add on what we're doing.
Well, let me stop you there and make sure that, and maybe I missed it in the presentation. If you win the bid, you have to pay for the house. After you win the bid, you have to deliver to the land bank in 60 days a contract for the construction to repair the house. If you don't deliver that contract, you lose your money and you lose the house. You have to have a certificate of occupancy in 6 months after you win the bid and somebody moved in. If you don't have a certificate of occupancy and somebody moved in 6 months, you lose your money and you lose the house. This is not the Wayne County Treasurer's auction. Okay, this is something where we're going to follow up on each individual parcel. And I had it happen before, and after the first 2 or 3 people lost the house, nobody bothered to bid again that wasn't really going to fix it up.
Okay, I heard you clear, but we have a system out there where people are going and buying these houses because they can afford it. They buy the houses, and even if they fix them up, they don't live there, and the houses are still vacant. I'm saying that we need to get a community, a real community out there that people would like to invest in, put some more money into it. And just like they did over in the Boulevard Lothrop area, they had a real plan for the people when they moved them out. They fixed the houses up. And that house, it's been 40 years and it still looks really good. It's something like that we need to have. And this is a small area that we're dealing with. And I think we need to go a little bit further than just people buying the house for $500.
They're not going to buy the house for $500. That's the county treasurer. But again, we need to be honest about what city government can do and what city government can't do. Is city government going to change the culture of your neighborhood? No, it's not. That's going to have to come from the neighbors. Yes. That's going to have to come from the ministers. What's my job? Get the lights on. Get the ambulances to show up. Get the parks cleaned up. Get the houses occupied. That's my job. But I'm not promising you that I can change the culture. That's something we've got to do as a community.
I'm saying, can that be in place with what you're doing?
Again, I would say this is a conversation that you should have with your neighbors. Right now, I'm doing what I can do, but I'm not going to stand here and promise you what I can't do.
I just don't like to see any money wasted, because
Okay.
Oh,
But
okay,
your
but-
point, no, your point's a good one. I'm just being honest with you. I don't have a plan to change the culture for the neighborhood. But I can tell you, I go from neighborhoods to neighborhood in this city. We're gonna start some auctions next week in a neighborhood where the abandoned houses, you can't tell they're abandoned because the neighbors are so tightly pulled together. They're cutting the grass and cleaning the windows, etc. There's got to be some leadership from this community.
We do that, and with our block club, we
Okay,
cut the grass
good.
and do the
Good.
windows.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Good evening.
Good evening.
I have a concern about a house that was demolished on Kentucky, and it was demolished some time ago. I don't know exactly when, but it's a big hole
Right.
that's still
Right.
there. And
Okay.
with it being summer, kids are going to be outside playing,
Right.
and it's dangerous. So what can we do about that?
Would you talk to Kim and give her the address? Because that was the old demo process, and they left holes. I can't go to a community meeting without somebody telling me something like that. We'll get them out to fill it in, but that's why I moved the demo over to the land bank and the next group. So you won't see that in the next wave, but it's still our responsibility to fix that one. So if you'll get Kim the address, we will get somebody out and fill in the hole.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Good evening.
Good evening.
I hear you speaking about the auctions for the houses that you're going to be starting lawsuits on. And you did mention that Talmer Bank is planning on putting forth money towards the businesses up and down Wyoming and some of the neighborhoods. Will you be implementing the same lawsuit procedures with the business owners that are leaving these vacant buildings around the neighborhoods? Because that's as dangerous as the abandoned houses and almost more dangerous.
Yeah, and the answer is I started that when I was prosecutor. I took a couple of party stores. The difference when you take the commercial buildings is you end up with high-powered lawyers on the other side who fight you back. And the answer is legally, can we do it? Yes. Are we going to target areas and do it? Absolutely. But right now, I'm starting in the neighborhoods. I am more worried about people going to sleep where in the house next to them is going to catch fire in the middle of the night. I'm going to hit that first, but within the next year, you're going to hear me come back and talk about exactly the issue you're talking about.
Okay.
What do we do with our commercial strips where they've walked away? It just drives me nuts. They spray paint graffiti on these things.
Right.
We're going to get to that stuff.
Thank you.
But this is where I'm starting.
Okay.
Other questions? Yes, ma'am.
I have a concern. It's not so much about the program that you're running right now, but it's a program that I would like to see regenerated in this community. There was a time when they had money available for homeowners that have been here and that have been sticking it out and to repair existing properties, and that's what I'm interested in. I've been here over 48 years in this community, and I need help. I need help. I've retired, and I'm in a position where I can't afford to do everything that it needs to be done to the home. So I need help with grants, low-interest grants, or low-interest loans, or grants in this community. And what are you doing to bring money here for us that are still here, that have properties that need to be repaired? I understand about the homes that need to be demolished, and that is another need, but we sorely need help in our communities right now.
Yeah. There is a program that covers maybe 150 homeowners a year across the city, and we can get you the details on how to apply for it. But again, I'm just going to be honest with you on what we can do and what we can't do. And we are a city that's in bankruptcy. There is not some source of funds out there to be making significant numbers of loan for repairs. It's just not there. And so here's my question. I've got $50 million in federal money that is allowed only for demolition. We're going to make sure we take down the houses we can't save. I think we can sell these houses and hopefully pay enough to keep going and keep occupying houses. But I don't have a good answer for you.
There's been no federal money pledged to the city for...
There is probably $2 or $3 million a year citywide. About 150 people a year qualify for it. There's a whole income process. We can get you the detail, but I'm going to say 10,000 people apply for the 150 a year. So I want you to be able to participate, but I don't want you to walk out of here thinking that there's this big source of money. Your best chance is going to be if you can afford a home repair loan from a bank like Talmer. So here's what I'm trying to do, is if we can get the houses in your neighborhood occupied, we start to raise property values in the neighborhood. We make a lot of other things maybe more possible, but there's
What
no big
about
program.
lobbying? What about going to Lansing and lobbying for
We
money?
have a Republican governor, a Republican House, and a Republican Senate.
But we've got you.
I can stand here and tell you that this is what people do at election time, right? I'm going to go and bring that home for you, okay?
Right.
Am I going to get a whole bunch of money for Detroit out of a Republican legislature and Republican governor?
But start the
honestly,
discussion. You got to start somewhere.
I start the discussion every day. I'm trying to be honest with you about what I think I can do and what I think I can't do, and getting a lot of money out of this Republican Lansing. What you ought to be thinking about is a big part of why we are where we are is 4 years ago in November, a whole lot of Detroiters stayed home in that election. And if you want to change that, it starts by getting out and voting this November.
You know, Ms. Hinton is right. There is a lot of property that's being grabbed up by outside investors. I know friends in California and Utah, and they call me and say, you guys, I just saw this property, you know, and they're buying up, and they don't even live here. They don't even plan on coming here. They're asking me to go check out property for them. And we have to be more, monitoring of how we disseminate these properties through these, especially when you're doing them in a bulk. Because I've tried to buy property and I've been told you have to put $1,000, going through Wayne County, you have to put a certain amount down for, and then you have to buy on a bundle. You have to put all the homes in a bundle and put so much in each, so much for each home in that bundle in order to get the prices that you quoted at $500. And it's just not doable for an average citizen, you know, for the average citizen to do anything like that. And we're not trying to live in the property. We're trying to recapture our community, like you stated. We're trying to make the place better, the community better, by fixing up the homes and maybe provide a second income for ourselves. So we just have to be better in monitoring how these properties are disseminated.
Yeah, and I'm going to keep saying this, and you won't know it till you see it. This is not the Wayne County auction. The Wayne County auction is after the house has not paid taxes for 3 years. The houses are gone. They sell 10,000 in 1 week. It's a crazy process. We're going to be selling 1, 2, 3 a day. But I appreciate your skepticism. Until you see it, you won't see the difference. Yes.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor. How are you doing?
Good.
I'm the president of the neighborhood Marygrove Community Association, right? And I want to tell you thanks personally for starting in our neighborhood, because we have already started and trying to do what we can to keep it a community. What I see that happens in our neighborhood is that most of the people that are here are elders, and the young folks won't come out and help us because they just won't. The elders, they're afraid to come out and say, hey, be a neighbor, cut a neighbor's grass, help a neighbor with this or help a neighbor with that, because they feel like if they stand up, they're going to be chopped down, okay? These people that we're planning on getting in our neighborhood, I hope that when they come, they'll have the understanding that there is a community that's going to accept them, and there's a community that's going to reject them if they do the wrong things. We have a lot of people that sell dope and do whatever they do to get money, and I just hope that the people, it's not even a question, but I just hope that the people that comes in this neighborhood understand that we're not going to accept nonsense.
And so think about this. If you are a dope dealer and you want a house to operate out of, how hard is it to find a house in this town that's open to move into, right? I mean, the dope dealer's not bidding $10,000 at it all. They got plenty of choices. But your point is an important one, which is here's what's going to happen on the auction. We're going to put a house up. It'll be whatever, 16224 Roselawn. And what'll happen is we'll put it on the website on a Monday. We'll say open house is on Saturday, come through and see it. The auction's next Monday. We're going to want the neighbors to be out on that Saturday because people are going to come through that open house and look at the property. That's the time for you to be there and communicate to people. You're going to be welcome. Here's what we're looking for in the neighborhood, and bring them in right away. That's the kind of way we got to work together. Yes.
Hi, good evening. I'm from the Marygrove community as well. I've worked in the past with the Block Club, and they are making efforts. And I have to co-sign the other two speakers that were saying that there are people who are actually monopolizing as far as buying properties, especially Michael Kelly, who has dominated the, the county market, and I'm sure he's going to jump over to the city market when that's available. Also, in the interim, what are you going to do to move these criminals out of these houses? Because they're still here. They're patrolling the neighborhood better than the police. They walk back and forth down our communities. They ride their bikes. They're out all times of the day and all times of the night. They're terrorizing our community. I'm sure you know this. Plenty of the elders have been tied up in the houses around here and robbed. So what are you going to do? I understand police is a problem, but this is a really, really important problem in this neighborhood.
There's nothing that frustrates me more than that I am not responsible for public safety in this community. And I wish I could tell you something different. But on October 1st, Kevin Orr is gone, and I will be responsible for public safety. The police are doing a lot of things right, but we do not have full city government behind a public safety plan today. And we need to get there. I wish I could tell you something else, but there's nothing I can do about
until October
the police
1st,
department until I get authority to run it. And then you are going to have every right to say to me, why are these people owning our neighborhoods?
Okay, thank you.
All right.
Good evening, Mr.
Yes,
Mayor.
sir. Hey.
My question is, when all of this is done, the matrix that you will be measuring success, can we be a part of building that so we will know when you go to the next neighborhood whether or not you really were successful, not just the numbers, but the entire process that you're going through?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. So let me tell you, I wish I could take you through it, but we started in the 7 Mile and 75 area when I was the prosecutor. We started there because there was a little 9-year-old girl who was asleep in her bed who was murdered in a drive-by drug retaliatory shooting. I went through the neighborhood, solid brick buildings, a number of abandoned houses, lots of violence. We went through and did exactly this. We sued every single owner. We turned the houses over to those who would win them in the auction, and on the others, we knocked them down. I could take you down those streets 9 months later, and it wasn't just the houses we filled in. The other people on the block, they were planting flowers. They were painting their gutters. There were Century 21 signs popping up on a block that probably hadn't seen one in 5 years because the community rallied and it brought it back. And so in 9 months, you and I are going to be standing here and we're going to say the idea failed. If it did fail, I don't know what the answer is because we got 50,000 abandoned houses in the city. I guess we knocked down 50,000.
No,
or it's going to succeed.
I don't think that's the area that I'm speaking of. The failure, I believe we're going to be successful. We are going to work with you. But I want to know the crime statistics. Everything that's tied to a neighborhood. Can you and your whole department help us with that to ensure that it's not just a housing project, but it is, I know you aren't responsible for culture, but we can depend on your department, your government, our government, to know that this community, the statistics are down on all the negative numbers.
That's exactly what we need to do. Okay. And we need to share those statistics all the time, and we need to strategize together because government doesn't have all the answers.
I understand.
Right? So we got to do that together.
Thank you.
Is anybody enthused about this idea? Yeah. Okay. I was going to say, wait. Okay. It seems like there's a sense in this town that you just give up, it's hopeless, you can't do anything about it. So we're going to give this a shot, and I will be back here, whether it succeeds. And I'll tell you this, we're going to make some mistakes. And when we make them, we're going to adjust. The one gentleman might be right. Maybe it's going to be developers who win all this. Then we're going to have to figure out, what do we do to make homeowners? So we're going to have to work through these things together. And we're going to learn together. But I'm going to be back in this neighborhood a lot. You're going to see me on the streets as people are moving in. And you're not going to have any trouble coming and telling me whether you think I'm doing it well or not well. Thank you all very much for coming out tonight.